Hi, everyone. Stefan Schuster here, and welcome to episode 12 of the Journey Running Podcast. This episode will actually kick off season 2, or we'll call it season 2, just because I took a few-month break here. But all for good reason. A lot has happened since I reached episode 11 back in March. I finished grad school back in May and then ran 200 milers this summer. And then I start my dietetic internship next week. So all really great stuff. But enough about me. I really just want to spend this episode focusing on our really great guest that we had today, Patrick McClellan. Patrick is a fellow Moab 240 finisher. He recently placed 8th at the Ouray 100-mile endurance run. He is a yoga instructor and a world traveler, to say the least. And, we touched on a lot of subjects in this episode, everything ranging from meditation to nutrition to world traveling, training and racing. And then I should also throw out there that we had a co-host for the first time, my good friend Joel Gartenberg, who is in episode 3 of the podcast. So we had a really great episode here. I'm excited for everybody to finally hear it. Without further ado, let's welcome Joel and Patrick to the show. All right, cool. We're on. We're live.
So Patrick, how is life on a scale from 1 to 10?
Oh man, life's been great so far. I'd have to rate it like a 9.5 right now.
Whew. That's really high. Not quite as high as your race at Ouray, though. No, okay.
All right, Joel and Patrick, welcome you guys, both of you, to the Journey Running Podcast. For everyone listening, just a heads up, today's show is going to be a little bit different as I actually have two guests joining me for the first time, Patrick McClellan and Joel Gartenberg. Some of you who are listening right now, you might remember Joel from being on the Journey Running Podcast, episode 3, Run Your Next Ultra in Crocs with Joel Gartenberg. So Joel's back today because when I told Joel who was going to be on the show, his first question for me was, can I be a co-host with you? So I know you're really excited for this one, Joel. Welcome back. And also welcome Patrick to the show for the first time. I was actually wondering if both of you guys could give a brief introduction. Joel, just in case anybody hasn't heard your episode before. And Patrick, since this is your first time, welcome.
Hey everyone,
Thanks,
I'm
Steph.
Joel. Oh, thanks, Steph. Dang. All right. I'll go quickly. I'll go quickly first. I'm Joel Gartenberg. I like to run 100 milers in Crocs. All right, Patrick.
Perfect.
Hey, Steph. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Excited to be here. Good to see both of you guys. I'm Patrick McClellan. I like to run ultras, and yeah, I don't know what else to start off with.
That was really modest for a guy who's run Leadville, Ouray 100, and Moab 240. I guess, Patrick, could you tell us a little bit more about how did you get into running? What's your background with the sport? What do you like to do for fun? Just stuff like that.
Sure, yeah. So I grew up playing soccer from age 3 to 14. And then my freshman year of high school, I joined the cross country team. And thinking back, I remember on the cross country team, we had an A group, a B, and a B group. And I was in the C group, which wasn't really an official group. I was one of the worst people on the team. It was just me and one other guy, back of the pack, really slow. Didn't really enjoy running. And the main issue back then was actually food and fueling. I was a really picky eater, didn't eat enough, and running long distances was just really hard. But then somewhere in my college, around sophomore year, my older brother was into running, and he suggested that we sign up for a half marathon. And by then I had, figured out the eating thing. I was eating a lot more, and went out and ran a half marathon with my brother on almost no training, and really fell in love right then, just with, the process and challenging myself and, running a lot further than I thought I could. And then you want the whole running background?
Yeah, give us it all. This is your
Okay.
time to shine.
Yeah. So I ran half marathons for a few years, and then um but was never really super into training. I just loved racing and kind of seeing how far I could go. Um, one day I was running the Austin half marathon, and you come to a point like at mile 11 where you turn to go to the finish for the half, 2 more miles, or you like make the left turn to go for 26. And in that moment right there, I just decided like I want to run a marathon today, and just you know, pushed through. It was really hard, but I had a lot of cramping. Wasn't really fueling right at that point, and yeah, that's when I did my first marathon.
Wait,
Uh,
Well, yeah, I got a
wait,
questions
wait,
too.
wait.
yeah,
You
go
go.
shoot.
Did somebody say anything to you, since you're probably wearing like a half marathon bib, like at mile like 18, 19, 23?
Yeah, I had conversations with a few people about that. Like after I made the turn, they're like, aren't you supposed to be in the half? And I was like, well, yeah, but I really just wanted to run the marathon in the moment, so I just went for it.
How old were you?
That had to be, I was around 20, 21 at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, that's young.
Did it cross your mind that you might be running a full marathon that morning?
I had thought about it, yeah. And my older brothers were also running the marathon. And but they were more into like training. They had done the long runs before.
Right.
Um, and I just decided in that moment, like, why not? Go for it.
Okay, so you're a little brother.
I am. I have three brothers actually. I have two older brothers, one younger, um, and we've always done races together, running triathlons, and they've been a great support in that way.
Yeah, so from that marathon, how did that evolve into running ultras then? And are they a part of that journey as well?
Yeah. So um, I ran a few more marathons. That first marathon I ran was like 4.5 hours, but really fell apart at the end. And then I had one year where I trained more appropriately with long runs and wanted to break 4 hours. Did that, um, and then got into triathlons also with my brothers. And then when COVID hit, I had a lot more time on my hands, as we all did, and decided at that point that I wanted to do an Ironman. Um, and for those of you that don't know, an Ironman is a long distance triathlon. It's a 2.4 mile swim, 112-mile bike, and then a full marathon. And so for that race, I had to really shift my life around and train a lot more. Um, so through the help of YouTube, essentially, I created a plan, started training a lot more. I was training between 10 and 20 hours a week when COVID was going around. Um, and at that point, got much fitter, started doing a lot more longer workouts, and really fell in love with the ultra space, and just like training and enjoying the process. And long story short, my Ironman race got canceled, I think twice. And in that time, I had a trip to Colorado planned with my brothers where we were going to do all the Sangre de Cristo 14ers. And my oldest brother had this crazy idea. He found this race, the Sangre de Cristo Ultras, uh, and it was like the first day that we were in Colorado, and he was like, "We should do this on day one." And so he and I signed up for the 50K. We ran the 50K.
Was all of your things just still in boxes, like just sitting somewhere?
At that
Like,
point, that was
how long after you got there did you run this race?
So I actually went out 2 weeks prior because I was dating a girl in Colorado at the time. Um, but this was before I moved into the van, which we can talk about that later. But yeah, this was in 2020, September 2020. Yeah, I met my brothers came out, we met in Westcliff, and then like their first day we ran this 50K. And it was just so much fun. Like trail running, it was so different than all the training I had done in Texas. I remember getting to this 50K was an out and back, and I remember getting to the mile 15 and a half aid station, and this ultra had it had a 50K, it had a 50 miler, 100K, 100 miler, and I remember thinking like my only regret is not signing up for the 50 miler. And I actually asked the people at the aid station, I was like, can I go to the 25-mile aid station and then turn around and do the 50 miler? And they said no, just for safety reasons and whatnot. But yeah, I fell in love with trail running then. And that was my first ultra. Fast forward, I went back to Texas, continued training until April for the Ironman, Ironman Texas. And at that point, it had been like almost 2 years since I signed up, with all the, they had kept postponing the race. Or actually, no, they canceled it again. They canceled it again that April. I continued training. And then that summer of 2021, I came out to Leadville. I met someone on Facebook who needed a pacer for the Leadville 100. Came out to Leadville by myself, and agreed to pace this girl for 38 miles from Twin Lakes to the end. And at that point, I had run the 50K, I'd run a few marathons, and like the idea of running 38 miles was very scary. I had no idea if I could do that. And then got to pace. It actually ended up being a different person due to my runner getting altitude sickness, but met this guy at Twin Lakes like 9:55 p.m., 5 minutes before the 10 p.m. cutoff, and he and I spent the night together running, and we made it to the finish line like 5 minutes before the cutoff, and it was
Wow.
It was a life-changing experience. Just watching all the runners push through their battles, their stomach issues, I realized that like why can't like there's no reason I can't do this. And I actually pulled out my phone at mile 95 of the race, and I was like, I'm gonna find the first 100-miler and sign up for it and do it. And so as I was rounding the corner of Twin Lakes that day, the next 100-miler was actually Sangre de Cristo, so which I had done the 50K the prior year. So, and I remember thinking like should I just do the 100K? Should I just do the 50-miler? Like 100 miles seems like a big jump from 50K from 38, and I decided to go for it, and then spent the next 5 weeks training. I had planned on going back to Texas after Leadville, but ended up just staying there, training on the trails, and then going on to run the Sangre de Cristo 100-miler. And that's how I got into ultra running.
Yeah, so I have quite a few things to comment on here. First of all, because this is going to go on YouTube too, I have to say, Joel, are you smashing sushi while Patrick is telling us his life story?
It's surf
You don't have
limit.
to answer.
I've got like 3 minutes left. I'm done.
I'm sorry, I had to comment on it. Because people who are listening will like not have seen that. It was pretty funny, I thought. But Patrick, there's a few things I just wanted to comment on there. First, I think it's really cool that Sangre was your first 100 miler because that was also my first 100 miler. And then for people who are also listening, wondering how we all know each other, it's because you actually met Amanda, who was on the podcast. Blanking on what episode number it was, 9 maybe. And so you met Amanda there, ended up pacing her at Mogollon the following year, Mogollon Monster. And then Joel was my pacer, and that's how we all know each other, which is, yeah, just one small thing leading to another, which is pretty cool.
That's right, man. We gotta plan another group ultra. Mogollon was a blast, and I loved getting to meet you guys.
Joel had a good idea. Do you remember what you told me at Cascade?
Yeah, so Stefan lives very close to a park called Cheeseman Park. And I believe it's like a perfect 1 mile loop around the park. And I'm thinking we kind of host just a really small thing with just friends, maybe keep it like under 10 people. And we do a 100 miler around Cheeseman. Or we could find like a local 24-hour race. So we can all like camp out and have like a social aid station or tent that we can all kind of hang out with and just run a bunch of miles together under the stars.
Sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, I like it.
Count me in.
Cheeseman's it's 1.4 for anyone listening if you want to look that park up in Denver. Great park. Love running there. But yeah, the Cheeseman 100 would be pretty sweet. But I also like the idea of a timed event because then we can all just like stop and camp and like hang out whenever we feel like it too. But yeah, Patrick, I do have a question for you. So, the jump into ultras, you did Sangre, it sounds like, because you had experience there for your first 100 and because it was like the next one after Leadville, which was funny because when I ran Sangre in 2019, the 100 miler, I had also paced at Leadville and then signed up partially because of pacing at Leadville. It was really inspiring being out there. But you're also, you run really intense like ultras. I mean, Leadville, Moab 240, Ouray. From the conversations that like we've had, you always seem to be seeking out like the hardest races. Like, have you always been like that, or like is that something you developed? Like, where does that come from?
Yeah, it's a good question. I remember after finishing Sangre, my immediate next like idea was if I can run 100 miles, like how far can I run? And so it wasn't like I need to do another 100 miler. It was like I need to run 200 miles or more. And so that's what prompted me to sign up for Moab 240. And so yeah, that next year I also really wanted to run Leadville because I had paced it, and that's sort of what sparked me to run my first 100 miler. So yeah, then in 2022 I ran Leadville. Well, I put my name in the lottery for Leadville and Moab, and did not expect to get into both. But
Wow.
Luckily got into both. So those were my two big races last year. But yeah, like signing up for like doing the next harder race, I think that's still a part of like what I'm searching for. I'm really curious to see like how far I can go, and also how technical of the course I can conquer, and like yeah, definitely want to continue pushing the bar there.
So how do you push the bar of running past Moab 240? Because I mean, there's Cocodona 250, but I'm sure you want to go more than like 10 miles further.
Yeah. I'm definitely interested in Cocodona. But like I would also like to do something even longer. I've thought about going for the entire Colorado Trail in like one big push. I feel like that could be done in like 7 to 10 days. That's around 500 miles. And I don't know, from there, like I have other ideas of longer things. Like there's a Trans Texas run that's around 1,000 miles. There's the Transcontinental run across the U.S. Um, I'd love to do that. However, I don't know if I still like road running because I mostly do trails now. So maybe more, I'd do something like the PCT or the AT. But yeah, definitely looking to continue exploring how far I can go, and also um, just enjoying more technical courses. In terms of like 200 milers, I just learned about the Tour de France in Europe somewhere. It's
That's a
like a
big
200
one.
miler with a ton of vert. Looks beautiful.
Yeah, what was your experience at Moab 240 like?
Man, Moab 240 was a lot different than I expected going in. Um, I think after running Leadville, I I mean I did better than I expected at Leadville, and so I went into Moab kind of thinking like I'm gonna race this, I'm gonna go as hard as I can, and um, really pushed like the first 30 miles and went a lot faster than I should have. And it heated up to like 100 degrees in the desert. It was like a red rock furnace out there, and um, you know, 6 hours into the race, I was like in the medical tent, dehydrated, not able to think or speak clearly. Um, getting help from the medics, and took about 2 hours to kind of come back to life there. Um, and then from then on, um, that first day and second day, I think I was still under the impression that like I really want to push, I want to go as fast as I can, um, and like not sleeping enough, not fully taking care of myself at aid stations, not really taking the time, and um, had a really rough second night going up Shea Mountain. Um, but then had this realization day three that like I'm in one of the most beautiful places in the world with a bunch of amazing people. Um, I just want to enjoy this. I just want to like enjoy the trails, get to meet people, make friends, uh, enjoy the time with my crew. I was lucky enough to have my dad and grandpa there, and um, yeah. So then day three and four, I had a really big shift in my kind of approach, where I was just like, I just remember like at those aid stations with my dad, just like laughing for like hours, about all the different things that happened, and um, meeting a lot more people, and just kind of like enjoying the trails, and yeah, that was my big takeaway from Moab, was like we do this to explore beautiful places and have fun.
Um, Patrick, I'm gonna switch the topic up a little bit. When I met you, did you mention you were yoga certified?
Yeah, I am. I'm a certified yoga instructor. I completed a 200-hour power vinyasa yoga teacher training in 2018, my senior year of college.
Okay. So how has that like informed your ultra running at all? Because I'm kind of drawing some similarities into maybe some of the breathing and mindfulness practices of yoga, translating pretty well into ultra running, but maybe you can touch on that a little bit,
Yeah,
if there is
I
anything.
definitely, yeah, yoga and ultra running. I think like when it comes to my approach to training, yoga comes in handy a lot. I balance. I do a ton of yoga. I think it's really important, like for the physical body, but also the mental body. Because like before a race, when I'm deep in a training plan and kind of like hitting my peak mileage, it's a lot mentally. And so having a meditation practice is really beneficial. Uh, and then also like the stretching component, the physical asanas, I think keeps the body healthy. Um, and interestingly enough, I've actually started meditating during races some, um, which has been really beneficial and grounding. Um,
What does that look like? So first of all, I have a few questions based off that comment. Is the difference between yoga and meditation that meditation is more so mental, whereas yoga is more like the physical act of like stretching out the body? And then secondly, when you say you're meditating during races, are you stopping or are you just doing some sort of exercise in your head or breathing or like I'm very new to these subjects.
yeah, so good question. Yoga is a lot more than I think most people think. There's like 8 different limbs of yoga, and one of the 8 is the physical asana. And that's what most people think of yoga, like stretching essentially. But there's 7 other limbs of yoga that are more mindset related. Like 4 of them are like all meditation, uh, that have to do with mindset. Um, and I think the mindset part of yoga is actually, why I continue to do it even more than the physical. But then as far as how I do it during races, the first time I ever did it was during UTMB Thailand last December. I was in a really rough place mentally, just not thinking very positively, and um, I use an app for meditation called Headspace, and we were going up this road, and so it was like a one small section that wasn't trail, and I closed my eyes, I put on the meditation, and I continued moving, continued walking, but just remember having a huge shift in my whole perspective uh, from doing the meditation, uh, and just gaining a new outlook and um, yeah, and then sometimes I'll do it at an aid station if I need to be grounded. Um, yeah.
Interesting. So yeah, I have like the Calm app and I use it at night sometimes, and it's essentially giving you like breathing exercises and it's saying inhale and then just focus on like the breath instead of anything else around you. It's actually really hard.
Yeah, yeah, that's essentially the main thing about it, is like I feel like sometimes I get overwhelmed with my thoughts, and to just kind of come back to the most basic thing in life, which is the breath, and focus on that and forget about whatever story you're telling yourself about why you're slowing down, why you're not feeling great, just to kind of come back to the essence, which is the breath.
Joel, you kind of did that when we were at Mogion. You did a lot of breathing exercises when you were pacing me.
Yeah, no. I don't have any formal yoga training, or I don't practice too often. I'll sometimes go to like a class maybe 3 to 4 times a year, but I definitely do a lot of things to stay mindful. Um, and yeah, it's definitely like I think I think the narrative of whatever you think is going on in the race is always a lot stronger in your head than the reality of the situation going on. And doing things to stay present can help you overcome a lot of those obstacles.
Yeah. So like let's say somebody's looking for a framework to let's say that I mean everybody experiences highs and lows when they're running an ultra. Um, this question actually comes from Lizzie, who was wondering this from you, Patrick. Do you have any sort of like any sort of like framework or like step-by-step thing that you do when you're in a low point? Is it always pulling out that Headspace app, or does it like differ from, I guess, different low point or different race to race?
It's a good question. Hmm. I don't know. It definitely it definitely always comes back to like what Joel was saying, being present. Um, I think sometimes I'll think about the training and reflect on like everything you put in before the race and recognizing that like you're ready, you're in a low point, but it's gonna get better. Um, and then also like having things to look forward to. Um, and for me, like I've been lucky enough to have a really supportive crew at a lot of my races, and that's a big thing that I look forward to, getting to see them at the next aid station. Um, I do think it's important to just focus on the section that you're in, the climb that you're in, uh, not, you know, it's like how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? Like how do you run an ultra one section at a time? It's the same thing. Um, yeah.
Yeah. And similarly, I was wondering, because this is something I'm trying to get better at. This is also why I downloaded like the Calm app, is just trying to get better at being present in daily life. I was wondering like what advice you have for me or anyone else listening to this. Like how can one get better at being present in life in general, especially when things are just so busy with like social media and just we all have so many distractions and things going on.
Oh man. Definitely feel the social media thing. With regards specific to that, I don't know. These social media app makers are so smart these days that I feel like they're designed to trigger tons of dopamine, and like I feel like everybody can relate to being addicted to social media at times, and like the scroll. And um I personally I delete the apps uh almost every day. Like and then having to go back to the app store and re-download it is enough of a burden that like I only do it when I need to. Um, but then as far as staying present throughout the day, I often meditate, like like if I have a big important work meeting and I'm nervous about it, or um, just not feeling great, like I'll pause for 5 minutes before the meeting and just stop whatever I'm doing. I might have a bunch of work to do, but I just take a minute and do some breathing exercises and um, just like come back to it's just a meeting. It's just life. Like you can get through it, and that's one thing I've learned through ultras is like I feel like I've surprised myself at like how far I can run, how how far you can go, and like it's kind of given me the confidence that like if I can do these hard things, like I can do anything. Uh, and and so you know a lot of what we do is not that hard, and like it's gonna be okay. And just kind of remembering that uh, is helpful for me.
Yeah. No, it's that's funny. That reminds me of a conversation I had with someone back when I was working at a running store about a year and a half ago now. I was talking to somebody about like the Barclays, and we were talking about the somebody who had finished, um, and the person I was talking to made a comment about how life just must be so easy once you can do something like finish the Barclays, and I was like, I mean, to an extent, but like I remember thinking the same thing about a race like Moab 240. I was like, oh, if I can do this, everything else will be easy. And that's not really true. Everything else is just, you just have more confidence to tackle because you run the ultras, I think. But that doesn't make like anything else easier per se.
That's a really good way to put it. Yeah, like having a lot more confidence in yourself to do things.
Yeah. So when you ran Moab 240, I want to go back to that just for one quick second, because you had made a comment to me that really stood out back then, which is that you told me that when you were running the race that you were quote unquote like finding your voice in Moab, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about like what does that mean to you, and like what changes in your life did you want to make because of that?
Yeah. So during Moab 240, I had a lot of time on my hands, a lot of time to think. I was out there like 99 hours. And it's a lot of time to like think and process. And um, one of the things I realized and was pondering was like I'm a very introverted person and don't always speak up. Like I just prefer to stay quiet, do my own thing, stay in my lane, not like rock the boat. Um, but like I realized that maybe like in addition with like the confidence that comes from doing these things, like that like my voice matters, my opinion matters, like I have good ideas, like and that I need to speak up and my contributions are valid. And so I think like even like in my professional life, I've noticed like I'm much more inclined to like speak up when I don't agree and um, kind of have that voice and participate a little more. Uh, and that was, yeah, that was a big takeaway from Moab.
That's beautiful. Do you well, I just wanted to share thank you for being on here today. I wouldn't be here if I didn't value what you had to say just in general. So, um thank you for coming to that conclusion and speaking up more. I'm sure a lot of people have appreciated it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joel. Appreciate that.
Is there a topic that you wish more people asked you about that you want to speak up more about?
Um, no, nothing comes to mind. No,
Okay. I was just wondering if there was a particular thing.
no, not
Do
really.
you mind telling us a little more about your van life and how you made the jump into that and
Yeah,
why?
definitely. So when COVID hit, I told you about how I started training a lot more. I also purchased a minivan, like 2 months into COVID, and that first summer in 2020, well, I went remote with my job, so that allowed a lot more freedom. Very fortunate to have the ability to work remote and uh, travel. Um, so yeah, I got the van in 2020. I traveled a few different places, but was in the van like 6 weeks. And at that time, like I was like visiting friends, and like I would like sleep in it sometimes in the road in a sleeping bag, and just like loved it. Just loved the freedom. Loved uh, waking up and sleeping at the trailhead or wherever. Um, and then in 2021, that year I was yeah the year I paced Leadville. Um, I stayed in Colorado for like 7 weeks, and at that time, like I put a little memory foam topper in the back and was sleeping there. I was getting more comfortable, uh, and then um,
Wait, just to hold up, just so people realize when Joel says like you're in like van life, you're not actually in like a one of those camper vans. You're in like a minivan.
right, yeah, I have a Honda Odyssey. But there's a lot more space than people think. Like it's a total soccer mom van, but it's got like eight feet of length in the back. You can fit a whole sheet of plywood. You can fit a couch in there. It's more than enough room for one person.
Don't forget your microwave.
Everybody, thank you for listening to the Journey Running podcast. We are sponsored by Honda Odyssey. Honda, please send us some vehicles. Thank you. Okay, continue.
So I guess in 2021 I really fell in love with both 20. I mean, I fell in love with.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. I thought that was really funny.
That'd be sweet to be sponsored by Honda. Side note, Hondas are the most reliable vehicle. Like, you can't go wrong with a Honda. They have very low maintenance issues. Yeah, I mean, Hondas are great.
Okay, there had to be like one downside to being in a Honda Odyssey for that long of a period. How long? Wait, were you working? Like, did you have your laptop? How did you get Wi-Fi? Did you park outside like coffee shops and stuff? Like,
so I've worked from a lot of different places. I worked from coffee shops. I've worked from co-working spaces, libraries. Libraries are really good. Friends' houses. But yeah, in 2021, I was in the van like 3 months, and then 2022, I decided that I needed to move to Colorado. I needed to be in the mountains. I needed to, go all in on trail running, but I couldn't really decide where, like where exactly. Was it, Denver, Boulder, Leadville, and so I was like, well, I'll just live in a van and like travel around and try all the different cities. So in 2022, my dad helped me like convert the van. We took out all the seats, built a platform, put like a proper mattress in there, built a shelf, installed a microwave. I got this big battery that powers the microwave and everything else, the lights, and really pimped out this Honda. And I moved in exactly, fast forward 2022 April. I finally got to do the Ironman, which was a great experience. Although at that point I had run like 200 milers, and a 12-hour race just seemed to go by so fast after doing hundreds. So I moved into the van officially 1 week after that race. I made a quick trip to Utah, did a few in the national parks there, and then spent 6 months full time in the van, moving around. Spent a lot of time in Leadville, training for Leadville. But yeah, I can't think of any downsides of living in a van. I really can't. Like, I currently
awesome.
am renting a place in Ridgeway in the San Juans, and I often spend I still spend a lot of time in the van. Like, I leave, some weekends I'll sleep in the van like 3 nights in a row, and I could totally do it again.
So I want to come back to the fact that you're living in Ridgeway, but before that, before you basically moved there to train for the Ouray 100, we have to talk about the fact that you spent like 6 months in like Thailand and Indonesia and Vietnam. Like, what inspired that trip? I mean, I'm just gonna let you take it from there.
For sure, yeah.
And what do you do with your van while you're there? Of course.
Yeah. So after Moab in October last year, I was itching to do another race, and found UTMB Thailand, which was a 100-miler in northern Thailand near Chiang Mai, and it went up the highest mountain in Thailand. And UTMB is on my bucket list, and as most of ultrarunners know, you have to acquire these running stones by running UTMB races. So I figured, and I also was not looking forward to spending the winter in the van with all the snow. That might be the downside to living in a van, Joel, is winters. I haven't done that yet. But yeah, so I found this race. I had always wanted to visit Asia. Fun fact, I was actually born in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. So part of this trip was a pilgrimage back home. But I went to Thailand first. Showed up like 3 days before the race, was super jet lagged. I would probably do things differently if I did it again, in terms of like preparation and planning. Uh, but yeah, that was an incredible experience. Um, Very different from US ultras. Uh, there was only like 9 Americans there, so a lot of cultural differences, language barrier. Aid stations were interesting. Just trying to like communicate back and forth, and being super delirious and tired uh, was some interesting problems that I had to work around. Um, but yeah, then after I stayed in Thailand, traveled around for a bit, um, and then continued on traveling Southeast Asia for like 4 months.
Was that planned, or was it like that marathon where you're like, I'm just gonna go the full 26 on the spot, or were you like planning to come back from Thailand a little sooner originally?
So I had planned to be there at least a month, um, but I wasn't sure how it was going to work with work, and if I would even like I didn't know. Like I had never really been to Asia before, and I didn't know how I was gonna like it. I didn't really have a plan on like where all I was gonna go. Um, I sort of had in the back of my mind like I could potentially stay here until the snow melts in Colorado, because I got to get back to Colorado to train because I love it here. This is by far my favorite place in the world. Um, so yeah, I sort of went there indefinitely, um, but ended up loving it. Had a lot of fun. Got to see a lot of cool places. Um, and yeah, it's there.
And you said you were born in Malaysia?
Yeah, I was born in Kuala Lumpur. So that was like my third stop, where I went, got to see like the neighborhood I grew up in, and it was really cool. The neighbors that were there when I was 25 years ago were still in the same house, and I like went and knocked on their door and said hi, like, do you remember me? And they did, and we talked for hours, went out to dinner. They told me about, my parents and my brothers and what they remembered, and it was really cool.
Oh wow. How old were you when you moved to, I assume it was Texas then?
Yeah, I moved to Houston when I was 3.
Okay.
So.
So do you have any like memory of like being born there, or is it all kind of faded because you were so young?
Yeah, I have no memories of there.
That must have been interesting, like going back and like putting the puzzle together then.
It was, yeah. I had heard stories from my parents, and getting to experience the culture firsthand was really cool, and seeing like what shaped my formative years.
Yeah. What was the biggest thing you learned on that trip?
Um, I came away feeling extremely fortunate. Um, Fortunate to have grown up in the US, fortunate to have the education that I have. I think it really made me appreciate um, like my college a lot more, because a lot of people over there don't have that same opportunity. That was probably the biggest takeaway.
Yeah, and also, I feel like I remember you posting, or maybe we were talking over Instagram when you were over there, but you said that I forgot what country you were in, where you said that people like don't really run there, and everyone thought you were fascinating because you were this guy like just running in the streets. I forgot where you were. I swear you told me something like this.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm being honest, I feel like running is somewhat of a luxury. Like it's so different in that like it's so hard just to get by, just to, you know, pay the bills over there, that a lot of people don't have the free time to train like we do.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, so a lot of people don't run. I mean, a lot of the places I was were also really hot, and yeah, people were fascinated by the fact that I would just go out and run 5 miles, 10 miles, whatever. Like even other foreigners, like in the hostels, they're like blown away that I still want to run every day. And in one place in particular, in Vietnam, small town, uh, I interacted with like 30 different people in the span of an hour, and they were clapping, they were cheering, they were like getting out their phones, taking videos, like following me on their motorcycle, like just asking like what I was doing here, and it was really cool.
Dude, it's like a Rocky scene.
Hmm.
That's really cool. Do you have any like favorite stories from that trip that you like when people say what's your favorite like story or memory? I mean, I'm sure that like visiting where you grew up was a big uh a big piece of that answer, but like do you have any other like stories from the trip that you love to share?
Hmm. What comes to mind is Nepal. Nepal was my final stop, and my favorite part of the trip. I got to do the Annapurna circuit, which there's, I mean, Everest has tons of really tall peaks, and there's four Annapurna peaks. They're all like 28,000 feet, you know, around the height of Everest. And there's this loop that goes around them. It's like 160 miles, very famous trekking loop. Uh, and like those mountains, like it's hard to describe. Like Colorado has big mountains, but these mountains are just out of this world tall and beautiful. Um, so getting to be there, um, at the very end of that trip, I I did the whole circuit, and then there was another trek to do to go to Annapurna Base Camp, where people go to actually climb to the summits. Um, I wasn't planning on doing it like when I went there, but decided like, hey, might as well go see it. And then like that last day, I did. Traditionally, it's like a 5 day trek, but I was like, there's no, it's only 30 miles with 10,000 gain. Like, there's no reason I can't do this right now. And I remember talking to like the guides there, and they're like, that's impossible. Like, no one's ever done that. Like, I've never heard of anybody doing what you're trying to do. And I was like, well, I'm gonna try it. You know, if I don't make it, I'll just turn around. And woke up at 2 in the morning and did the whole thing in a day. And people
Wow.
were shocked. Yeah.
Oh wow.
What was it like? How did the train like? I guess how challenge because I hear 30 miles, 10,000 feet, and that sounds like a hard 50K day. But then you take into account the elevation. I have no idea what the terrain was like. How long did it take for you? Were you scared at any point?
So for that one, honestly, like it was all class one, nothing super technical. It was just really long. And I think the only reason it takes a lot of people 5 days is because they're carrying all their gear. And like
Mm.
I just went in with my Solomon pack and had water. But the cool thing about Nepal is like you don't really need to have as much because it's so developed and catered to the tourists that like there's towns, there's restaurants, there's places to stay every few miles. And so I had a lot of like opportunities for bailout points if I needed to stay somewhere. And like food, you don't have to carry a lot of food because you can just stop and I mean the food is amazing. Like they cook everything at the restaurants. They got American food, Asian food, noodles, pasta, like you can get whatever you want. It's a runner's paradise.
And yet they don't run. But they climb mountains over there.
They do. And I will say like the Sherpas over there are extremely fit. That's one thing that's interesting to me. It like in America we don't really have a ton of Sherpas, but these Sherpas are beasts. Like they carry like 60, 80 pounds of foreigners' gear, and like they tie it, they wear a belt in a backpack, and sometimes they like attach another backpack to the back of their backpack, and then they tie this rope around their forehead, and they move very slowly, but like it's insane. I'm blown away at how strong they are.
We don't have hiking guides, but we don't have Sherpas, but we have Andrew Skirka.
Who's that?
He makes like a lot of like through hiking and hiking content. I had to make that joke.
Huh. Wait. What? So is the rope on the head like just another? Is that attached to the bag as well?
Yeah, yeah. So the bag and like the mass of stuff that they're carrying is so large compared, like it's just so big that like they have, yeah, the strap around their head, and then there's like something like a comfy little padding thing that goes on their forehead, but yeah, it's like for balance because they're moving this massive thing up the trail.
Wow. That is bonkers. Um, huh. Would you go back? Would you go back to that area?
I would definitely go back. I am toying with the idea of another Nepal trip like this fall.
Oh wow, already.
Yeah, yeah. There's this other trek in the Everest region called the Three Pass Loop. So there's like three passes that go up to 18,000 feet. Um, and it's equally as beautiful. And yeah, I would love to go back, I think.
What brought you back to the U.S.? Was it running the Boston Marathon in April, or was it
That
just time?
was that was yeah. Yeah, I got back. I went straight from Nepal to the Boston Marathon. Got there like 48 hours out. So yeah, that was the main thing bringing me back.
Man, that must have been some great elevation difference.
Oh yeah, 18,000 to sea level, I think, in a span of a week.
How was Boston?
Boston was amazing. Highly recommend if you ever have the opportunity. The energy in Boston is electric. There's so many runners. It's hard to comprehend, like 30,000 runners. I mean, beast runners, like, and it's like a big party, like the days leading up. Like there's all these pop-up shops, and I feel like it's a big gathering of all your closest marathon friends.
That's cool. I don't have any marathon friends. Everyone is on the trails now. I'm going next year though, so that'll be fun.
Nice. That's
Yeah.
right.
My parents were like, "You need to book the hotel." I was like, "I do." They're like, "It's okay. We already got one because we know you're not on top of it." They wanted to go to the race too. So it's cool. I'm excited.
Smart of you to book now. That
Smart of
city is
them.
packed that weekend. Oh yeah, yeah.
Excited. So yeah, you get back, you run Boston. Sorry, Joel, did you have a question?
Oh no, keep going. I was gonna change it up again.
Yeah. What were you gonna change it up to?
Oh, I kind of wanted to hear about since you mentioned you struggled with food really early on when you were in high school cross country, and then something switched when you were suddenly able to eat more food. I was hoping you would touch on that, and also just your whole philosophy around like training and eating food today.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it wasn't that I didn't want to eat a lot in high school. It was that the the my diet was very limited. I mean, it was like I was just so picky for whatever reason. Um, like my diet was like mac and cheese, peanut butter and jelly, and like pasta with butter, and, like
Mm.
and Cheerios. And I don't know. I didn't have a diverse diet, which was problematic when I would go to like gatherings and not have anything I would eat. Um, but yeah, like sometime in high school that shifted and I started eating more. Um, and then and then when I was age 20, I as I was getting more into running, I had some friends that were vegan, and uh, they they were telling me about all the benefits of being vegan, and I decided that I was going to try a fully raw vegan diet for a month. And so raw vegan is like way more extreme than vegan because you can't eat anything cooked. And so I was essentially just eating like raw fruits and vegetables and nuts and making a ton of cheese. Um, but like through that process, I felt so good. I felt so clear-headed, um, like no fatigue. My body felt great. And then after the 30 days, I sort of did um, what is it called? Like an or basically you slowly reintroduce the different food groups. So like after you've done that for 30 days, your body's not used to like meat or cooked things, and so you have to like slowly bring things back in. And so I sort of treated it like a science experiment, and like I would try cheese and like make notes of how that made me feel. And like the conclusions there were like meat made me feel pretty tired, and dairy kind of gave me some stomach issues. So going forward, I decided to limit those two. Um, and I think for 6 months I was kind of like fine tuning, figuring out what was going to work, and I was mostly vegetarian. But then fish felt pretty good still. So I currently identify as pescatarian. Um, I often choose to eat vegetarian or vegan, uh, plant-based, and um, it really seems to be working. Um, but yeah, my whole philosophy around food these days, especially, is like food is fuel, and like if you want to be a NASCAR race car, you got to put the best fuel in your body. Um, and so I'm always thinking like whether if I ran earlier in the day, it's like the foods I eat right now are to recover from that run and fuel the next run tomorrow.
So building off that, could you walk us through like a day in the life of eating as Patrick?
For sure. Yeah. I keep things pretty structured most of the time. Routine is pretty important for me. Um, in the mornings, I like to eat steel cut oats with nuts and fruit on top, and then for lunch, I pretty much eat the same variation of like roasted vegetables, rice, and a protein, whether that's chickpeas or like salmon or shrimp. And then dinners, I sort of change it up, but like a lot of pasta, Thai food, pad Thai, curries, more roasted vegetables, and then snacks throughout the day are pretty important. Oh, I also eat a lot of breakfast tacos, like eggs, sweet potatoes, salsa. Yeah,
I
it's a lot of my
understand why
diet.
you're at a 9.5 out of 10. I'm
Why do
getting,
you say
I'm getting,
that?
I'm just getting hungry thinking about the concept of tacos for breakfast. Genius.
Yeah, and the best part about breakfast tacos is you can eat them any time of the day.
What?
I almost, yeah, yeah. I I
Joel's
almost
like, I
always
can
have
have
the
pancakes
oatmeal.
for dinner.
Yeah. I typically eat breakfast tacos like for dinner more than I do for breakfast. I'm actually planning to make some breakfast tacos for dinner tonight.
Yeah. My mind's having trouble wrapping around this concept, but that's pretty amazing. I'm
I'll
trying to
have to
think.
make you
Oh yeah, sorry. Please.
I'll have to make you some breakfast tacos whenever we're together. I
Oh yeah.
actually that's actually a really easy meal to make out of the van as well.
Nice. I think we park your Honda Odyssey right outside Cheeseman Park, and we have a little taco stand aid station to every 1.4 miles.
So there's
Um,
there's
oh
like
yeah,
a coliseum that's kind of like right by it's like in the center of the park basically. That would be the best aid station,
amazing.
or we could
This,
just use the car. But I feel
this
like
is something.
Can
breakfast tacos at the Coliseum would be great.
That's
can
the
we
name of
put
my next album.
can we park the car in the Coliseum?
Whoa.
Nah, unfortunately not.
Yeah, not with that attitude.
I don't think Denver PD would love that.
I mean, have they tried Patrick's breakfast tacos?
Nothing like a little bribery.
Yeah. I was gonna say when I met Patrick and we were waiting to pace our runners, um, he brought this. We had eaten spaghetti the night before from this fantastic place. Um,
Yes.
it felt very geared towards ultra runners because they literally just gave you spaghetti in a bucket. And it was awesome. But
Yep.
anyway, I think we had rinsed the bucket out, and Patrick had put a bunch of oats in there and had this massive bowl of oatmeal in the morning, which made me feel really. It was honestly very comforting seeing him eat like that because I think nutrition is a very personal thing for runner to runner, and I've personally come from an eating disordered background, so I've had to really unlearn a lot of restrictions and be okay with the idea that um, I eat a lot of food and that's what I need. And like seeing, and a lot of runners out here, they're getting by with very minimalistic diets, and that's just not how I operate. So seeing how there's more of us out there that like to eat large quantities of food, and that's just how we operate. Thought that was really cool.
I'm glad you said that. Like, I think specific with running and ultra running and anybody who's doing high volume exercise, like I would almost put more importance on the quantity of food and calories that you're getting. I mean, obviously, like what you're eating is also important, but like if you're in a crunch and like I do eat really, clean most of the time, but like if you have the choice between like something that might be a little unhealthy or nothing, like eat the unhealthy thing. Like you have to fuel.
Yeah,
Yep.
I also just want to comment on that because I've talked to, having just gone through grad school for my master's degree in nutrition, I asked one of my professors who works with like the track and the cross country team a very similar question. Like, would you rather somebody eat like a bad diet, or like that's high in calories, or would you rather them eat like a healthy one that's like low? And he was basically like, well, the thing is, if you get in a lot of calories, you're probably going to be like for cross country track athletes, they're putting in a lot of high intensity, but also a lot of volume, like 60, 70 plus miles a week. He's like, for that kind of mileage, which is, I know what the three of us are doing, and even more for you guys run more miles than me even. Like for us, like we're probably going to hit all of our like dietary like requirements and our needs if as long as we're assuming we're getting in a lot of calories. So I mean, if you're trying to get in calories and you're also trying to get in like healthy calories, a lot of fruits, vegetables, like minerals, and you're actually like caring about that stuff, some junk food per se, or things that you view as junk food, as maybe even ramen just for the calories here and there, are like not going to hurt you the way people I think perceive that kind of thing will.
Yeah, I think we as runners need to start kind of changing our language around food too. Like this idea of bad food, junk food, unhealthy food. Like food isn't inherently good or bad, it's fuel. And if you're not hitting enough calories per day, healthy food is going to be those bag of Cheetos or those ramen or those Snickers bars, the stuff that's gonna get you to that basic need of calories before we even start to care about like micronutrients and macronutrients.
Yeah, and so on that note, I also want to mention, just having gone through like a medical nutrition therapy class, the people who are seen in a hospital, in terms of, I don't want to say their importance because all these problems are important, but if you have two patients who are just admitted to a hospital, somebody who's on the obese spectrum, if you're just by BMI, is generally what dietitians will look at. You know, they just get a piece of paper in front of them. They're like, hey, you got to go see this person. If they get somebody who's obese on that the BMI spectrum, or somebody who is malnourished on the spectrum, they're going to go see the malnourished person first. So it is a lot more unhealthy to be not eating enough than too much. That's my takeaway from seeing how dietitians work in a hospital, and then relating that to running, of course.
Makes a lot of sense. I personally definitely feel a lot worse if I like am fasted or haven't eaten enough in the day versus whether, if I, had some fast food or not the, highest quality foods.
Yeah,
And it's funny you mentioned ramen.
I love ramen.
I don't know if we want to use that to segue to the Ouray Ultra, but I
Oh,
consumed 12 cups of ramen during the Ouray 100.
let's
Really?
go.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell us about
It
that
was,
race.
oh
Oh,
man,
wait,
Ouray
wait.
was,
Can we back up for like a quick second?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So you get back from Asia, you run Boston, and then you have your sights. So because Boston's in April, so then your A 100 is in July. I was wondering if you could just talk about, like, you literally moved to Ridgeway, which is what, 30 minutes away from Ouray, to train for this race. I just want to highlight that real quick, and then if you could tell us, yes, more about the ramen and the actual race itself. But there's a lot to be talked about here, I think.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So after Boston, I spent a few weeks with family, and while I was doing that, I was mainly in Kentucky and Texas, with not a lot of access to trails, but I didn't have a lot of like. I took a lot of time in Asia off from like formal training. One, just to enjoy the trip, and also to give myself a break after last year. I think last year I raced like 7 races. They were all 2 months apart, and just was feeling a lot of fatigue. And really think that the reset in Asia was good. Like I ran some, but it wasn't super high volume like it is now. Um, but so yeah, I after Boston, I ramped back up training, and then planned to move to Ridgeway, which is right near Ouray. I'm like 15 minutes from the start line, which is also the finish line. Uh, and I also signed up for a 50K in North Carolina, called Quest for the Crest, and that is, they say it's like the hardest 50K east of the Mississippi. It's super technical. It's got like 12,000 feet of gain. It was awesome. I used that as kind of like a benchmark to see where I was, and kind of like serve as, you know, a starting point for my Ouray training. But yeah, after that, moved to Ridgeway, um, got back on the trails, picked up mileage, and I trained a lot on the course. Over the course of like 9 weeks, I ran over 400 miles on the course itself. You know, got to know every rock, every turn, every part of the course, which is one thing I like to do. I think being familiar with the course is really beneficial. But yeah, then I guess the race itself was so much fun. I've really fallen in love with the San Juans, honestly. I planned to move here to train for the race and wasn't really sure what I was going to do after, but I'm I think I might be here longer than I expected. Yeah. What do you want to hear about the race?
Well, you're being humble because you're neglecting a few stats, such as the fact that your training weeks were like 30,000 feet of vert. You're neglecting the fact that you finished, what, eighth or ninth, was it? And yes, tell
Eighth.
us more about this ramen.
Yeah. Okay, so the race, I went into it thinking um, a little afraid of the elevation, and so in training, I tried to do as much gain, you know, as much steep trails as I could. Um, Peaked at like 95 miles a week with 30,000, which proved to be sufficient come race day, because that really wasn't an issue. But what was an issue was the heat. It was like 90 degrees in the afternoon, and both days I got pretty hot, pretty out of whack from the heat. And I think around like 3 p.m. the first day, I was really feeling it, and had to take a little more time at an aid station to kind of refuel, get a bunch of fluids down, um, focus on sodium, slow the pace a bit so that I wasn't depleting myself as much. Um, but yeah, from like 3 p.m., I didn't really feel fully back to myself until 1 a.m. And that
Whoa.
was what brought me back, was this cup of ramen. I was coming down from Richmond Pass, like a pretty remote area, and I was aware that there was a water only aid station coming up. And so, you know, I had food and gels and whatnot and my regular kind of nutrition on me, but I come to this aid station, you know, ready to refill my bottles, and these guys are cooking ramen, and it was like it was it was like a mirage or something. I couldn't believe it. I was like, you know, it was getting cold, 1 in the morning, and they offered me some ramen, and I was like, of course, I'd love some ramen. And it was like exactly what I needed. It's funny that we were talking about ramen as if it were like, you know, an unhealthy food, but I feel like it's perfect during ultras. Like it's tons of sodium, tons of carbs, and like warm liquid, which is perfect when it's cold. Um, and so I downed that ramen, immediately started to feel better, got a second one, and then like from then on, I would go into every aid station. I'd be like, "Can I get 2 cups of ramen, please?" And uh, I asked them at one point, I was like, how many calories is this? And they said 460. So that means at every aid station, I was getting almost 1,000 calories worth of ramen. Uh,
Awesome.
yeah. And um, like day two, I had some stomach issues. It was harder to take down gels and stuff. So like that ramen was really, uh, you know, a game changer in like pre-fueling at every aid station. But yeah, I the race was really fun, beautiful. There were like 14 climbs. The views were out of this world. I was lucky enough to have five amazing pacers, who, the second day I was turning into a zombie, and they kept me motivated, they kept me moving. Um, we had a lot of fun out there, and they got me to the finish line. So yeah, felt really good to complete that race.
Were both of your parents in your crew?
Yes, both my parents came out. It was my mom's first ultra. My dad was my crew leader for the third time. Uh, he does an incredible job. He's like, his background is in like project management, so he loves coordinating groups of people, giving everybody a job, and like having everything organized and ready when I get there. And man, they knocked it out of the park.
That's cool. It reminds me of, I met Joel's dad who at Zion 100, like is that a year and a half ago now? Your dad's a beast also, running like Ironman and stuff. So it's cool when you have like a crew that you can rely on. But it's also funny because like the stereotypical thing to say in the ultra running community is like, don't bring your parents to a race, because the people who love you don't want to see you in like that much pain. Yet I think you said your brothers were there pacing you. I thought I saw that on like Instagram or Facebook or something.
Yeah, yeah. I had my little brother there. He paced me for one section, which was really nice. Yeah.
How how do you feel after what is that, 42,000 feet of gain and another 42K loss?
Yep. That it's really interesting. I am baffled at uh the recovery. I thought, like, this is the most vert I've ever done, like it's gonna be the hardest. But after this one, I feel way more recovered, like recovering a lot faster than say Leadville or Moab. And I think it's because how steep it was. Like there was a lot of power hiking the uphills, so really it was only like 50 miles of running the downhills. Uh, so yeah, definitely like less impact, and I'm feeling pretty recovered already.
Nice. What's next for you?
That's a good question. I don't have anything on the calendar. One takeaway from last year was that I think I tried to do a little too much. Um, and I'm taking August and September to just have fun in, enjoy time in the mountains. Um, but yeah, I do have a couple of ideas. Um, I'm thinking about Nolan's 14, which is 14 Colorado 14ers in the Sawatch Range, which is where I first uh, fell in love with the mountains in Colorado.
Nice.
Y'all
Yeah, that
heard of
would be.
Nolan?
Oh yeah, I've heard of Nolan's. I've seen some of the like routes. I haven't tried to do some of the hard parts just because they look really sketchy. Um, Dave has pointed like one or two of the routes out to me, and then just being on top of 14ers. Like I've done all the 14ers in the Swatch, but like sometimes I'll look at, like, let's say I'm on what was I on? I was on like Antero a few weeks ago with James, and I can't help but look. I'm sure he was looking too. Like, how do you get from here to I think Tabagua would be the next one you would hit, and then you'd go over to Chavano to finish it up, or you'd be starting either. I don't know. It depends which way you're going, I assume. But you look at like the potential ways to connect the peaks, and I mean, it just looks sketchy.
For sure. Yeah. No, it's a lot of off route and like finding the most direct line between each peaks. Um, but yeah, I feel like it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Because it's like, for me, I would just hike the Colorado Trail and then take all the standard routes, but I don't think that counts as Nolans. uh, that'd be pretty sweet.
As I mean, I think as long as you do it in under 60 hours, it counts as an official Nolan's finish. So you can do it. If you want to add more mileage via the standard routes, go ahead.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I don't know if that's the challenge for me. I need some rock climbing experience and more comfortable. I need to get more comfortable with the exposure, but I think you're just a really calm and relaxed person no matter the situation, it seems like.
I appreciate that. I try to stay pretty calm and focus on the moment and the step that you're in.
Yeah, I like that. Patrick, the essence of presence. We should call that the episode. But no, since we've been going we're coming up on like an hour and a half here, so I got a few more questions just to wrap things up with you. And I'm sure, I don't know if you've listened to some of the other episodes I've done or not, but I'm sure you know this one's coming, or these two are coming. I like to ask people, like, how do you define what success is for you in your life? And also, yeah, let's start with that one before we finish up here.
I would say success is continuing to challenge yourself and putting your mind to a goal and seeing it through.
Nice. And how do you define greatness?
How do I define greatness? It's a good question. I think achieving greatness is just having a good value system, staying true to who you are, being kind to others, being helpful. I don't know. I don't know if I've achieved greatness, so that's something I'm still figuring out.
Yeah. One good question somebody asked me relatively recently was not what is your definition of greatness, but how do you go about accomplishing that on a daily basis? Because I think that we think greatness is like this far out concept, far-fetched, I think is the word I'm looking for. And as ultra runners, I think we often think of like the events as like our opportunities to achieve greatness, but we forget that it's accomplished on like the daily basis of like treating others with kindness and respect, like you're talking about, and like helping others, which are things that you can do every day.
I really like Patrick's. I really like your answer there. I think having that value system in place, and then you listed a couple other values of being helpful and being kind. And when we go about life, we hit these intersections with other people or ourselves or our environment, and we have choices. And if you're acting on those choices, I think that's pretty great. And that seems like a pretty good framework. I really like that answer.
Yeah. Well, Patrick, I want to commend you. I try to tell everybody who's on this show the things that I care and like appreciate about them. So I want to commend you. I know you're a pretty introspective individual, but I know you had some thoughts about potentially coming on or not. But I want to thank you for being brave to share your story. Always remember that you can't be brave without fear. Otherwise, there is no brave. So thank you for sharing your story with the world. Thank you for setting audacious goals like trying to place highly at Moab 240 and Ouray 100. And yeah, thanks for just being yourself and being willing to be open here. I appreciate that. I know Joel does too. But
yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you both for being here. I've really enjoyed it. It was a lot more fun than I thought it would be.
Joel, did you have any more questions you wanted to hit on before we finish up?
I mean, there's going to be endless questions about the Honda Odyssey moving forward, but I think we're good to wrap it up. Thank you so much, Patrick. You're definitely somebody I look up to, and I'm glad that has entered my circle over the past 2 years. And I can't wait to see what you do next. And I'm also terrified to see what you do next.
That's really
Patrick.
funny. I'm the same way. I'm like I complete these things and I'm like, now I have to do something harder. Like, what is it gonna be? So yeah. Thank you both again.
I'm sure you'll find something. But before we wrap up, Patrick, if people want to follow you on your journey and watch you perform your next hardest thing in real time, where can they find you?
Yeah, best place is probably Instagram. I'm on Instagram at Acro Patrick. So ACRO Patrick. It's the best place.
Awesome. Any last words for the listeners?
I don't know, but the three of us got to get together for a run soon.
Yeah, we do. Everyone out there, just remember that this episode was sponsored by Honda, by ramen, and by the Bucket. That's the spaghetti place that we went to in Pine, Arizona.
Yeah, this episode was a perfect 9.5 out of 10, and thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Joel, as well.